Off with the territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land. I'll start that again. We'll do our Indigenous territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we're broadcasting from, today is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. We are also going to do our moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all of our decisions. And with that, I'm going to ask if there is a disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I could declare pecuniary interest on behalf of Councillor Freeman for an item discussed earlier today due to her place of employment.
Thank you for that. Okay, and then we have a number of minutes here from May 8th and from May 15th. Just wondering if we have a mover for the approval of the minutes. That's Councillor Hanmer and Councillor Roach seconding. Are we all in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. The next agenda item is our consent agenda. And I just want to take a look around and see if there's any desire to move anything out of consent agenda. It does not appear so. So can I have a mover to approve the consent agenda? That's Councillor Bassick, thank you. Do we have a seconder? That's Councillor Rowe. And are we going to approve that together? Yep. We all here? I'm not sure. Sorry, that was the approval of the consent agenda. Are we all in favor? I'll call that again. Okay, yeah, we are all in favor. Thank you very much. So now we have staff reports. So I will call Grant Curlew.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm here today to discuss staff's proposal to expand our administrative monetary penalty system, currently used for parking, to include all bylaw infractions. I'll start by discussing our current Provincial Offences Act system, then speak about what the AMPS program is, the process flow to dispute a penalty notice, the benefits of AMPS, the corporate policies, and the next steps for implementation. The current Provincial Offences Act system, or POA, is used to issue tickets for bylaw infractions and to resolve matters through a court process. This process can be time-consuming, intimidating, and inaccessible for the public. The POA system requires a ticket holder to file a dispute with the provincial courts. It can typically take several months or more for a matter to be heard and can require a person to take time off work to attend a trial. As an example of our current timelines, tickets issued for gathering limits during the pandemic are just now going to trial. The proposed AMPS program is an approach to handle bylaw infractions in a more streamlined and efficient manner. It replaces a traditional court-based process with an administrative system that enables the enforcement of penalties without the need for a formal trial. The system is designed to maintain a fair and transparent dispute resolution process and give staff more flexibility over the outcomes. The slide outlines the process flow in a simplified manner when a penalty notice is issued under AMPS. The ticket holder has a few options. The first one is to pay the ticket. The second option is to request a screening review. The screening review is the first opportunity for the ticket holder to dispute their tickets A screening officer will hear the matter and can affirm, reduce, or cancel a ticket. If the ticket holder disagrees with the screening outcome, they can select a hearing. This is heard by an independent hearing officer, and they have the same options as the screening officer. The benefits of AMPS. Implementing the AMPS program brings several advantages over the provincial offences process. Disputes can often be resolved through an email or phone conversation with staff, making the process easier for the ticket holder. The program also lessens the burden on the ticket holder, our legal services staff, and our officers, who are no longer required to attend provincial court for a trial. This change in process has shown to be beneficial through our experience with our parking tickets and AMPS, and it has greatly reduced the time to resolve a ticket dispute. The slide shows the comparison between our parking tickets through the POA, or Provincial Offence System, and over the last 3 years through our AMPS. We've seen a reduction from 246 days on average for a parking ticket from the time of issuance to the time of resolution, and we've seen a reduction down to 69 days through the AMPS process. Parking tickets that have gone through the AMPS dispute process have had a favorable outcome for the ticket holder over 90% of the time. The implementation of the AMPS program also requires a series of policies to protect the integrity and impartiality of the program and to provide guidance to staff. These policies already exist through our parking program, but need to be updated for our general AMPS program. The policies include preventing political interference, conflict of interest and code of conduct, financial management and reporting, undue hardship, public complaints and respecting the administration of the AMPS system, and the screening and hearing officer policies. So, to advance the AMPS program, Council will need to approve the following: our General Administrative Penalties Bylaw, amendments to the Screening and Hearing Officer Bylaw, approval of updates to the 6 corporate policies guiding the program, and amendments to each of the 22 existing bylaws to be enforced through the AMPS system. Subject to Council's approval of the expanded AMPS program, staff will work to recruit hearing officers, test our penalty tracking software, and train staff before implementation. That concludes my overview of the program, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from Council.
Thank you for that, Mr. Carlow. And I'm just going to turn to Council and ask you if you have any questions. We'll start with Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you very much through you, Chair Wright. Mr. Curler, thank you very much for your overview in the AMPS program. It's encouraging to hear that just with the parking tickets, there's been quite a change and quite a savings in time and time to resolution than what we had before. Can you talk a little bit more about the staffing implications going to this new system? Because obviously we're adding more potential offenses to it. And is it a shift, and where is that shift going to happen for staff?
Through you, Chair, to the Councillor. We do anticipate there will be a shifting of resources, typically from our court prosecution into the internal system. And we are also looking through the 2024 budget process to enhance our customer service ability as well.
Okay, thank you. One more, if I might. How about communication? This is a real change, and there are some obvious advantages, I think, to our community if they're not having to go through potentially a formal court case, if we're able to resolve things internally. What kind of communication strategy have we put in place?
Through you, Chair, to the Councillor, we do and have done some public engagement through some media inquiries. We also plan on updating our websites. The ticket that the accused will receive will also have updated information about the process, and we do plan on doing some public awareness campaign through communications to make the public aware of the new processes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And are there Councillor Bassick, you had a question?
Yes, two. Thanks through you, Chair. Yeah, just for council's benefit, because one of the policies about is making sure that we don't interfere in the process, which makes a lot of sense. But those are emails we get. We got a ticket. Can you help us? So can you just help us as council to understand how we can communicate when we really need to step back, just so we're all really clear on that piece of the policy?
Sure. Through you, Chair, to the councillor. There is a policy that requires council and staff not to interfere with the screening and hearing process, and that's to protect the integrity of the program. That doesn't mean that if council receives questions about a ticket that someone's received, that they can't engage staff and ask questions about it, or speak with staff about what the options are for the defendant. It's more so once they're in a screening process that council or staff don't influence the outcome of that process.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. And then, in the financial management policy, it says that municipal enforcement services is responsible for financial management and reporting. So I just wanted to make sure that you're also working with finance staff. It wasn't 100% clear to me when I first read the report about that, or if you were totally responsible for the financial piece. And I was like, oh no, why isn't finance also?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, yes, we have worked closely in developing the program with our financial analysts, and we continue to work with them in managing our finances.
Perfect, thank you. And last question, can you just highlight a little bit more about the restorative justice or mediation approach and what that will look like? Because that's kind of a relatively new process and approach for the city, I think.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. We've always looked for opportunities to use mediation in our enforcement process. Typically, before issuing tickets, we look to explore mediation options. But through our review of the policies and in consultation with our Indigenous, sorry, I'm blanking on the name here. If someone could help me.
Indigenous Initiatives, Anti-Racism, Equity, Accessibility.
Yes. We've incorporated, they will be involved in the recruitment process for our hearing officers to make sure we're getting people from a variety of backgrounds. And then we'll continue to engage with them to look to opportunities to incorporate restorative justice and mediation into the resolution process. So it doesn't always have to be a monetary penalty. The outcome can sometimes be a variety of options, which wasn't available to us through the POA.
That's great. Thank you so much.
And are there other questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through Chair Wright. I've heard some community members speak to concerns around equity when it comes to this process. I mean, to me, it seems like there are more avenues for us to pursue, like was just talked about with restorative justice pieces and things like that. And it seems like in general a more accessible process for people. So I'm not entirely sure where these sort of equity arguments come from, but I'm wondering if you could maybe speak to the accessibility equity piece around this process versus the POA process from your perspective.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. As I mentioned, we are looking for new opportunities to incorporate different approaches. This program is a lot more accessible to the public. That's the main benefit of it. As I mentioned in my presentation, no need to go to a courtroom to have a trial for a bylaw infraction. This resolution process can start with an email to city staff, and typically can be done completely through virtual hearings right to the end, or we still maintain the option for in-person for people that want to access the program that way. So we do offer a lot more, a variety of options for different people and what suits their needs.
And just a follow up, if I may, through you, Chair Wright, is can you speak to the training that staff are going to be getting from an equity and anti-racism through Sanjay's team, or externally, what that process looks like?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. We are still in early stages of consultation and looking at what training might be. Once this program is approved, we don't have a need to immediately begin using it. So we will do a slow rollout and make sure staff are trained properly. Staff currently go through training for diversity issues as it is right now, and we'll make sure that there's policies and procedures in place for staff that reflect those matters.
And Mayor, do you have a good? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair. I just wondered if you could please explain a little bit more about the iNotice and iProcess, because it's these new software, like you don't have to get into the details of it. My question really is, you indicate that there's annual operating expenses and staff time that's going to increase despite these two new pieces of software. So I'm just wondering if you could explain that, please.
Through you, Chair, to the Mayor. Yes, so these two pieces of software are software we've developed internally. They've been developed by our IMTS department for the parking tickets, and they basically track they allow us to issue the ticket and then track the ticket right through its life cycle through the dispute process. We're upgrading this software to incorporate other bylaw infractions. We're looking to automate as many processes as we can to reduce staff time, but there will be staff time still needed to maintain the software and make sure it's running properly.
So that's where the increase in staff. I'm just curious, like with the increase in automation, then where the increased staff needs are. I'm not challenging it. I just want to understand. Like, is it in tracking the tickets, or is it in the processing of them?
I don't think it'll be more so in the processing of the ticket, not so much in related to the software. It'll likely be in more inquiries to our office about tickets that through the provincial offences would have went to the court system or a legal services team. So it's really just shifting where the workload is, and we don't anticipate a huge increase in workload. We foresee the same amount of tickets generally being issued per year for bylaw infractions. This is more so just changing how they're resolved on the back end.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And I just, to pick up on Councillor Hanmer's point about communications, I think in some of the communications that's going to happen through this, it's important to remind citizens or residents of the overnight parking passes that are available for people, right? So that they avoid, because we do get some questions into council about, why can't I park here? Why did I get a ticket and that? So just to remind residents of how many overnight parking passes they're entitled to or that they can access. I think that would be helpful to hopefully avoid some of the questions that we do get into our offices.
Through you, Chair, to the Mayor. Yes, so we typically do public engagement throughout the year, especially when the students are returning, because it is a lot of new citizens that are unfamiliar with the bylaws. So we'll incorporate that messaging into our general messaging throughout the year, and maybe do some specific messaging around parking as well.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, and maybe through our neighborhood associations or something like that, because we do get quite a few questions about, about that issue particularly. And just my last question is, how aligned is this with the City of Kitchener and City of Cambridge? Are they following a pretty similar path?
Through you, Chair, to the Mayor. Yes, we've been actually working on this program as a joint initiative with both Kitchener and Cambridge. I believe in the next few months, both Kitchener and Cambridge will be taking it to their respective councils to look for approval. And the process is almost identical in each municipality. And we purposely tried to align those to make things consistent for the public.
That's really helpful, I think, because we are so intertwined that it's good to have that. And this is something that municipalities have lobbied for years. So I'm really glad to see that this is coming to fruition. So thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you.
And I just have one last question for you, Mr. Carrillo. Just regarding the screening and hearing officers and their recruitment and the alignment, as the mayor was indicating with Kitchener and Cambridge, are those individuals recruited from the community at large, or are we specifically looking to recruit them from Waterloo, the municipality of Waterloo's?
Screening officers are internal city staff. So there are municipal enforcement clerks and there are some select legal staff. Our hearing officers are recruited kind of just from the community at large. And again, we're looking for a variety of backgrounds. Specifically in law and mediation is kind of where we're looking, but with the recruitments, we try to get a variety of different backgrounds. So we have a kind of a mixed group of hearing officers to select from.
Okay, thanks. I'm just looking around to see if there's any further questions. Okay, we do have. No. Okay. We have a many-part recommendation here on the table, so I'm just going to look to see whether we have a mover for that. Councillor Bodley, a seconder, and Councillor Hanmer. And are we all in favor? Yes, we are. Okay, and that is unanimous.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next item, which is the digital services strategy implementation. And oh my gosh, I need my glasses. We do have a report prepared by Brandon Curie, and Brandon will give us a presentation.
Good afternoon, Council. So, long-time listener, first-time presenter. So great to be here this afternoon in front of you all. It's an exciting day for us because we've been working on some form of this for probably close to 5 years. It's just been active over the last year when we've really dug into it, but doing something like this has been in the back of our minds for a long time. So really excited to get into it. We're going to go through just a little bit about the content of the strategy itself and then how we plan to implement it over the next few years. So digital can mean a lot of different things to different people. So in terms of government, sometimes we find it helpful just to go through this just so that we're kind of on the same page with it. So probably the most sort of famous quote around this is from someone from the UK Digital Service. They were quite famous for completely overhauling their government and going digital as sort of early adopters. So digital is applying the culture, processes, business models, and technologies of the internet era to respond to people's raised expectations. And so that's kind of in the background of our thinking behind all of this. It's to deliver services where people are at in their lives in a more convenient and accessible way. So that's sort of the philosophical background, I suppose, behind some of this. And then also, what do we mean by services? Because that term as well has a lot of different meanings in government context. And so we're really looking at it from the perspective of the user. So user-centered services is a term you hear a lot these days, and that's exactly what we're trying to build with the strategy. And so, it sounds really basic, but it's something that helps someone do something. And the way that we like to think about it is from the perspective of a user, what do they want to do? Get a permit, apply for a grant, report a problem, challenge a ticket, as we just heard from Grant. That's probably how we would describe it. We would maybe not use the administrative monetary penalty thing, but that's just a little bit of insight into how we're approaching this. So there's a lot of reasons why governments are doing this, and we are indebted to our federal and provincial colleagues who have been working on these issues in a more concerted way for a number of years now. And so we're looking to scale some of the work that they've done down to the municipal level. So as we saw through the pandemic and in other contexts, the improved convenience and accessibility of being able to use a service digitally without having to come into a building to do it. meeting the expectations of the community, which, as we all know, being here in Waterloo can sometimes be very high because of the context of the community here. The lower cost of service delivery, it's order of magnitudes lower if someone can self-serve online versus having to come in or call. And then one of the really interesting ones is, freeing up staff time for more value-added work. So, over the course of doing the strategy, of course, we heard concerns about automation and replacing jobs and all of that kind of stuff. And we really see it as, automating tasks and manual work that could help free up capacity to be applied in other contexts. So what we've been doing over the past year, we've been consulting extensively with staff over this in a number of different contexts. We've done open houses, workshops, meetings, surveys, all kinds of stuff. And our focus with getting the strategy set up in that way is really to put our internal house in order when it comes to this stuff. A lot of good work has been done across the organization in different pockets on different initiatives. But we really want to bring it all together and create some common standards and goals and platforms to work towards. And we focused mostly on serving the public, but we also are looking at, and we heard a lot through our internal engagement that services that are internal to the organization also need to be improved and sort of built with the same user-centered mentality, just with the user being like the municipal employee running the back-end system. And as we went along, we know that the customer service strategy is also ongoing. Council's heard about that somewhat recently. And so we've been sort of complementing each other with, regularly having meetings, sharing information about, what their core activities are and what ours are and how they're going to complement each other. So we're very aware of what's happening on that front and actively trying to fit the two together. So the top takeaways from the strategy, the number one thing is that we're, just a little bit further behind than we'd like to be when it comes to overall assessment of our services. So this, the MOSA is the Municipal Online Service Assessment, and this was done by the consultant we worked with on the project. And so we're, sort of middle to lower end of the pack when it comes to some of these things. This measures like a huge array of different things. It's not just, our website or what you kind of see on the front end. There's all of the back end architecture and how it's all integrated, and it's quite a complex web of things. The good news about all of this is that we landed on, I think, a really good plan for how we're going to catch up. So we're, contemplating, a very close partnership between communications and IMTS. As I'll get into, we've repurposed a section of communications to deal with digital and web services. And we've got some new governance and operating structures that we're going to be putting in place to, make sure we're able to make a concerted effort on this. And the last thing is just that we know that it needs to be a long-term effort, and we will need some resources to, have that stabilized team over time. We're able to sort of make do with what we had at the moment now, but we'll be asking for more resources in the next budget cycle. And just that it's going to take a while to make really strong progress on this. We're trying to do the little things right that will add up to a lot in the long run. So the first phase, which has already begun, really, is the exploring digital phase. So that's running for the next year or so on existing funding. And we've managed to repurpose around building a new digital team in communications. So we're my team's now known as the Digital and Web Services team. So that's where this strategy will reside, and we're going to be the ones that own it. But we are partnering with IMTS on a new governance and operating structure. And so we've been working with Max and company on how to bring that into play. We have 7 digital principles that were surfaced as part of the strategy, and I'll be talking about those in a minute, but that's sort of the foundation of our digital program moving forward will be adhering to those principles. And we're going to be experimenting with new services and processes. So, as this year goes on, you'll probably hear about some different things that we're trying. We'll be putting out calls for user research and user testing to help bring the public in and developing these things as we go. But yeah, we're excited to get off the ground with a few new things over the next 12 months or so. And so just to take you quickly through these principles, because this is pretty important to this whole enterprise, is these are the foundational pieces that we're going to be using. And so the biggest one is that we're building services for users and their needs, which may sound obvious to some degree, but when it comes to how we've done things in the past, this is a bit of a departure, and putting the person who's using the service at the center really changes how you develop services and how you maintain them over time. We want to build services that reflect our vision of being a service-centered organization. We want to build services that are complete, and this just means that there's no gaps. They work end to end. There's no dead ends. Whether the service is completely digital or if it has in-person or phone components, we want that all to work. And the way that we'll be designing the services will be to have that complete end-to-end user journey. They'll be accessible by design, which means that we're considering those elements of the service at the beginning and not just at the end. Same thing for privacy and security. Obviously, we need the public to trust all of our online services. And we're going to use data as an asset, which means, sort of like we've been doing for years with, Google Analytics and our website, but just looking at how people are using things in order to make smarter decisions about where we should invest more resources, or how is a service working or not, which is again a bit of a newer thing than we've done in the past, and also working with multidisciplinary teams. So this is an approach that the province and the federal digital services use to help break down silos and to create teams that just have the skills that are necessary to do the services. So phase 2 is what we're calling designing digital. So that's kind of a year from now for the next 2 years after that. And we will be asking for additional funding per the council report that you have. And in this phase, we're really looking to start tackling like longer term, more challenging topics. So you've probably heard of things like single sign-on and account synchronization. So that's the idea that, we could have a Waterloo.ca or a City of Waterloo platform where, similar to Amazon or something of that nature, everything looks the same and you have one sign-on and you can access different services and the look and feel is similar and all that kind of stuff. And there have been some cities that have made pretty strong progress towards some of these things. And so we'll be looking to, build on what they've done in that area. Comprehensive design system that helps third parties or our friends in IMTS build applications that look and feel like they belong in sort of our family of services. And then corporate standards around things like forms, payments, registration, and other common digital needs. A big part of this is creating kind of like a solutions library where we can implement things more quickly because we already have done the work to figure out, this is the payment platform for the city. And so we can use that as a sort of an easier way to get things to the public faster. So that's phase 2. And then finally, phase 3, this is a ways off in the future, but this is when we'll, hopefully be a more mature digital organization with more digital services in the inventory, seeing self-service as a higher percentage of overall transactions. Services should be faster to implement and easier to run, and we'll have a mature process around user research, testing, and ongoing satisfaction. Because that's really, when it comes to measuring our success, that's what we want to be doing is figuring out, are these things really working for people or not? And we intend to do the work to figure that out. Okay. So with that, that's a really quick run through of a lot of big topics. So happy to take your questions, comments, and feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Okay, so I'm going to look around the horseshoe here. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Bassick.
I have two questions, but only one is serious. Like, the first question is, how did you come to that phrase? Were you with friends? Like at the beginning, were you with, you don't have to answer this, but these are all my questions, you know, like, were you with friends? Did you workshop it? Were you just listening to the radio one day and then you were like, I totally am going to do this the first time I talk at council? Have you used it before? What was the context of that? In any case, not for now, but that was an excellent opening. So well done.
Thank you.
My real question is, in the consent motion, we approved a new program for dog licensing. And so it sparked questions for me about how we will upgrade our digital services that we have now as we get further into implementation. And what if we have contracts with a third-party service provider? Are we able to cancel those contracts or renew them in a way that aligns well with the implementation of the digital services strategy? So really, it's about how seamless can we make this, or is it going to be choppy?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Vassick. So obviously this is why it's a longer term project, because there's a lot of different technologies we have today, and they have different sunsetting dates in terms of when they roll over and when new funding becomes available for them, and that kind of thing. And so I think we're going to be opportunistic in terms of when things come up. They're already up for renewal. We'll be looking to use those digital principles to reform the services, or to when it comes to selecting vendors, prioritizing, can they build an application that works with our design system? That could be like a procurement requirement, for example, so that we're selecting vendors that can work within our system. And that's an approach that other government levels have taken with this, because it is really challenging to either do it all yourself or to do it all outside, and it's always probably going to be a mix of the two. And there's a lot of factors, that go into whether you decide to do the going to market or doing in-house, based on how expensive it is, and are there established products in that area. But I think the major thing is that we're going to try and line everything up as much as we can with our digital principles. And I think over time that will slowly, bring everything together. If you look, if you're interested, the city of Surrey, BC has probably the best example of this. They sort of have a single sign-on portal, which, it doesn't have all their services on it, but they're very transparent about, which ones you can use on sort of the main government platform, and which ones they're still sort of transitioning into that. But from my I don't have a huge technical background, but from what I do understand, the synchronization of like sign-ons and stuff is becoming less and less of a technical issue. It's more, how do we get it to sort of look and behave the same across the board, so that somebody, registering for swimming lessons can also, pay for their pet license or do something else in sort of an environment that feels sort of familiar and easy to use.
Thanks. Yeah, improving swimming lesson registration would be great. But thank you. I think what's heartening is that you're thinking about it, you're looking into it already, and it's on your mind. So thank you.
Yep.
Okay, are there other questions from council? Okay, go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really excited about this. It's 3 years, but I wish it could be done in like 3 months. I know that's not possible. Well, maybe it's possible if there was like a ton more staff working on it, but really exciting to get this going, because I don't know about others, but I certainly heard a lot through the campaign about the need to improve all of this, the digital services, the customer service. I heard that significant amount, so I'm really happy to see this moving forward. One of my questions is, and I know you were talking about a bit about what you've learned from other municipalities, but What have you like particularly learned that like that will maybe take us from that? I think we're at 41, was it, percent? I forget what that chart was like, so that we can get there really quickly. Like, are there some things that we can cut out in the process because you've been able to learn, not to do this and to, and instead go down that path?
Through you, Chair, to the mayor. I'm not entirely sure if there is a shortcut. I think that, looking at our big systems is probably the fastest way to get the improvements, although changing the big systems is also the hardest. So, we have a big Amanda replacement project coming up later this year, which you may have heard about. So like something like that, which like our Amanda portal currently has a lot of services on it. So like bylaw complaints, building permits, all that kind of stuff. So like that would be an opportunity to improve several services all at the same time. And so I think we're definitely going to be focused on those things that make the biggest impacts. I didn't include it in the presentation, but in the report, there's some criteria for what services we should work on first. And for right now, it is some of the smaller quick win things. We're trying to build up our team and build up sort of the internal culture around some of these things. But there are big like infrastructure improvement opportunities coming. And I think that's really the fastest way to do this. There's also in the report, you'll see we're considering like a new website platform. So that's another 2024 project, but changing that kind of thing up can make a bigger difference faster than working on a lot of little things at once.
Okay, thanks. And just a couple other questions. I'm just wondering if the Sanjay and his team if they're part of the committee or if they're reviewing some of this, particularly for accessibility. I know obviously you're going to meet the AODA, but if there's other elements or things that should be considered. And I was just also wondering how residents, is there a way to sort of test this with residents, or is there a resident representative or something like that, so that we know that it's working from someone who's like, the user, the end user?
Through you, Chair, to the mayor. So we definitely plan on continuing to work with Sanjay's team on all of this stuff. They've been an important part of the process so far. We did provide a preview last month to GRAC of all of this work that we've been doing, and they gave us some good feedback on some items, and really letting the users in on the process is what we're going to be focused on when it comes to actually building out the services. And that's part of the reason why we're actually going to be making staff requests, is because this is sort of a new thing for us, is setting up recruitment panels and trying to get people in the room that are the actual users. And then there's lots of different methodologies for how you engage with them. You observe them using it. You can do it in person. You can do it digitally. There's lots of different options for that. And we'll be there's some digital services for doing this work. So we'll be looking at ways to do all that. But we basically intend to use user feedback at every stage of development. And some of the methodologies around this are you build a minimum viable product, like a prototype. You go out, test it, get your feedback, and then you iterate based on that. It's not just you going away and developing the service and then releasing it and maybe realizing that it's not working. You kind of try and figure out those problems earlier on in the process. And we do have some history doing this with some of our existing services, but we're trying to make a more concerted effort to be making it part of our regular process. And so I think the community will have a pretty big role in doing some of this. Depends which service it is we're working on. One of our first ones is a senior ride service. So that's a really cool one, I think, because that's a population that is sometimes assumed to have digital challenges. But the reason why we got asked to work on it was because they'd had so much demand for digital booking service for rides. So, when the time comes, that would be something that we would put out, through our, senior support groups, and trying to, probably do something in person with them to actually sit them down and watch them use the service to see how it works for them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And last comment would be, like, if there's ways to use our local tech talent, or, services that they have, I hope we look for ways to do that as well. But thank you very much. I really hope this is transformational for the city and for the community. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. And I don't see any other comments from around the horseshoe, so I'll just have the last word here and say thank you for this report. And I appreciate, as we all do, the calculus of the user experience, the design of the workflow, what's involved with procuring and tendering digital services, and then the work that goes into actually making them functional. So big kudos to your team for getting us this information. And so I will just go to council, and we need a mover and a seconder to receive this report as information. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I'm happy. Okay, great. So Diane, Councillor Freeman moving. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Roach seconding. Are we all in favor? Oops. Oh, sorry, you have comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring council's attention about the financial implications. So there's going to be another piece to this one when it comes back for a 3-year budget. So again, just, I'm just trying to put some flags in the space so that you know that you're kind of starting down the path that's going to need more funding.
Great, thank you for calling that to our attention. And so I will go back to call that vote. Are we all in favor? Okay, thanks, that's unanimous. Okay, so moving along, we have a number of housekeeping items. There's no consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting. There's no notice of motion. There is no communication or correspondence. There is no unfinished business. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. Oh, okay, hold on. There's no questions, and we're on to new business. Go ahead, Councillor Freeman.
So I'm sure somebody else is going to say this too, but the Service Center open house was awesome. And just kudos seriously to all of the team members. I tried to stop and talk to the volunteers and thank them for their commitment, and for the organizers. It's always an amazing day. I love helping out and serving popcorn. It gives me an opportunity to connect with people. I'm sure we ran out. But it's just so meaningful to see a lot of our retired staff members coming back, wanting to be involved. I think that really is an example of like the workplace that we're building here at the City of Waterloo, and how staff value one another and how they seek opportunities to come back together and to be together and to stay in touch. So it was just so great. Whoever organized the weather, I think they seriously planned that one out as well. And it was great fun to see the new electric Ford truck that we have there, the pickup truck. The equipment operators always have the utter patience of Job with every child that's lifted into the cab with them. So just, and also our community partners that were there, Reeve Green Solutions, and Supportive Housing of Waterloo Region. I hope that they had a really successful day of donations. I know that Councillor Wright was there in her capacity with the University of Waterloo, and there was just so many other. Innova Energy was there, Union Gas, all of those partners that really relate to utilities and climate change and all the things that we do here as a city. So and our parks team was there and talking about lawn mowing and all of the pressures that we have around that too. The CTV news crew came to me and said, what's the goal of this open house? Why does the city do it? I mean, I didn't want to speak on behalf of the mayor, and I went off and found Mr. Ormson for him. But I also said, really, it's about, a lot of times people never get the chance to see all the equipment we have, to understand that we have mechanics that fix our equipment, to understand how big snowplows are, how much work it is to manage salt storage, the greenhouses, and how hard people work all year round getting the flowers ready for the flower beds, and just like the fact that we have Zambonis in there, that we maintain our own Zambonis. There's just all these pieces, right? And so it was just so great, and I just really, hats off to everyone.
Thank you for that reflection, Councillor Freeman. I think we are all in support of your comments. It was a fantastic day. Also, big kudos to Grand Porch Party organizers. That took place on Sunday, and despite some large raindrops, but intermittent raindrops, huge success, and big props to our neighborhood team for supporting those sorts of events in our neighborhoods. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Mayor McCabe and Councillor Bodley for attending the World Refugee Day launch at the museum last Sunday. It was a huge success, and we certainly appreciated their attendance. I wanted to also draw your attention to the Walk with Refugees for a Stronger Canada, and that is on Saturday, June 24th, starting at Kitchener City Hall, and it's a 2-kilometer walk through downtown Kitchener, stopping at the museum, Schneider House, National Historic Site, Reception House, and ending at Victoria Park at the Multicultural Center. And the purpose of that walk is to walk with newcomers who have experience in the refugee journey. So it's not just their experience coming to Canada, but it's in their settlement process, because there is an assumption that once you reach Canada, everything is fine, but it isn't fine. It's often such a struggle in terms of language barriers, access to healthcare, education, and employment. So it's an opportunity to learn at each of those stops from people themselves and what their experience is. So I invite all of you to attend if you're interested. And also, if you visit the website ccoric.ca, there are actually another half dozen events celebrating and recognizing World Refugee Day in the region this month. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And just looking around the horseshoe, I think, Mayor, you have something you'd like to... Oh, Councillor Basak, you ready?
Yes, thank you. Councillor Bodley, are you going to talk about Tri-Pride, just because I saw you there? Oh, okay, then I have two. Okay. Do you want to do it? Because I saw you there. No. Okay. This is the most fun part of the meeting. Thank you. There were two Pride events on Saturday. The first was in the morning, where community members organized as a counter protest to a potential infiltration, basically, of a drag story time, and community members came together and drew with chalk and had a peaceful, joyful celebration where they very loudly and not loudly, but it communicated loudly that effectively hate has no place here. And then, of course, Tri-Pride happened later that day at Victoria or Willow River Park. And I was there only for a little bit because I went with my kid. And so we actually spent most of our time looking at carp in Victoria Park water. But we did see some of the performances and walked around a little bit, and people were having a wonderful time and celebrating the work that's been done to make our communities inclusive, and the work that certainly still needs to be done, as is increasingly becoming noticeable. So the second thing is, the third, but that was kind of a Pride Month update, was at Rosalie Park, which is in Ward 5, and Toronto author Lindsay Sear-Vogel came and read her book, Dear Street, to kids and families. And the book is about a little girl who hears people complain about their city. Leaves, grumble, grumble, grumble. and other relatable city council matters that people grumble about. And she begins this project where she writes and leaves love letters around her community. And then, of course, other people start doing the same and she finds them. And on a day when she is particularly grumbly, and it is sort of, it's very beautiful. And illustrations are also beautiful. And then she facilitated an activity with the people who were there, and then did not litter, but strategically left love letters in Rosalie Park. It was beautiful because also Wordsworth Books was there selling a couple of her books, and so that was a nice local business connection. And it brought together people locally who knew Lindsay, who are also authors or aspiring authors. So it was really a community building event, much bigger than the ward, but very local to the ward, where a block connector organized it, who is also organizing another event next weekend. So thanks also then to neighborhood staff who make the block connector program happen. And we might even have another block connector because they met the block connector that exists now. So it was a great day, June 10th. There were so many events, but that one started my day and it was really exciting.
So just adding on to that, I'm going to go to you, Councillor Bodley, but open streets.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, well, I'm going to pass to you.
Okay, thank you. Since Councillor Bassick left me one fun thing to speak to. So I just wanted to highlight open streets out on Willis Way this on Saturday as well too. Busy day going from the service center open house to open streets to Tri Pride. Lots going on in the community, which is great to see. But it was really great to see so many folks out in the square, and there was breakdancing and a DJ and games and all sorts of stuff going on, which was awesome. And I decided that I needed a beverage after the open streets, and so I was sitting on the patio of a local establishment here, and I also saw some hardworking members that we all know, Diego and Damien from the BIA, out putting trees all along King Street, which was great as well too. So really lots going on to contribute to the vibrancy of the community this weekend, and I just want to thank everybody who is responsible for all of those events. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bodley. And yes, those trees look fantastic along King Street. Really appreciate that. Okay, we're going to go to the mayor now.
Thank you. And I just would quickly add the Belongathon that the Christian Horizons, I participated in that walk, which was fantastic. They raised $90,000. And then there was also Greek Food Fest. There was just so much happening on, yeah. No one slept on June 10th. But I just did want to take a few minutes to recognize an important milestone today. And this is a bit of a surprise to the person who's celebrating this. So it is to our CAO, Tim Anderson, who's celebrating 20 years of municipal management. So we didn't want this milestone to go by without recognizing it. So working for municipal government, in my opinion, I've said this a few times, requires people with a real passion for public service, people who with expertise in their profession, but who are also able to work very directly in the public eye. And Tim has not only worked for the city of Waterloo, he continues to lead staff, council, and our community. And I know I've described him as unflappable. I think he really is. And so he has a great personality for this type of a role. So Tim began his municipal career as a construction inspection assistant for the regional municipality of Waterloo in 1987, and he was still in university at that time. So, and then he graduated in 1990, and he joined the City of Waterloo as a maintenance management coordinator. So you do have a very long history with our city. Tim has held progressively senior positions within the City of Waterloo since joining the organization, including a project engineer in 1993, a team leader of the Utilities Division in 1996, team lead of the Roads Division in 2000, and an executive officer to the CAO in 2001. So after Tim completed his term as the executive officer, he was appointed as the general manager of the Public Works Services Department of the City of Waterloo in 2003. So as general manager, Tim's accomplishments included working on the funding and implementation of the University of Waterloo's Research and Technology Park and that development. So that was a huge accomplishment for not only the city of Waterloo, but the community and the university. And as well, he worked on many infrastructure and environmental initiatives. And he participated in employee contract negotiations and master plan preparations, which gave him a really strong foundation and wide breadth of the city to when he began his chief administrative officer role of the city on May 1st, 2010. So in addition to Tim's work at the city, he's provided leadership to numerous organizations, including the Professional Engineers of Ontario, the International City and County Management Association, and the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators. As I said in my inauguration address about 7 months ago, Tim is a strong leader. He's unflappable. He's a leader who listens, who's strong enough to let others lead and to use their expertise while providing guidance and direction. So Tim, on behalf of council and staff and volunteers, and I think the entire community, we want to say congratulations and thank you for your years of service since 1990, but also the 20 years of management experience that you've provided to the city. And we have a small token of our appreciation with a certificate that we'd like to present you.
Oh, wow. If I can share. Mary,
Absolutely, the floor is all yours.
You did surprise me here. Absolutely. It was a pleasure to receive that acknowledgement at the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators. And I looked at Mark because I think he was there and probably brought the news back to council here. But no, it's been a tremendous career, and the team that I get to work with and work on all sorts of variety of projects, as council's talked about. We're involved in an array of business and service provisions for the community. And so it's exciting work, challenging work, and great to work with the councils as well to keep building the great city of Waterloo. So thank you.
And it's not over yet. Your career's not over yet.
For anyone on our live feed, we're just taking a photo opportunity here, and we will resume with the agenda shortly. Okay, I think we are ready to move on to the last item on our agenda, which is the enactment of bylaws. There is a 27-part recommendation here. It goes on for a couple of pages here. And it's all related to an item earlier in our agenda. So I just want to see whether we can pass this as one big thing. And I need a mover, and that's Councillor Bodley, and a seconder, that's Councillor Freeman. Yeah. So I'm going to call the vote. Are we all prepared? Yes. Okay, we are all in support. It's unanimous. And then the last motion of the day, do I have a mover to adjourn the meeting today? That's Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Vasic. And all in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Unanimous.